is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another little update video, and today we have a few more cuts to go through this morning before 4 p.m. Eastern time. When we get the full list of the Lions 53-man roster, we'll be live over there on Bleacher Report for my first reaction to that at about 4 p.m. Eastern time for about 30 minutes over there, and then I may do a live stream over on the channel to talk about the same moves once again. But this morning, we had a big one take place. And I was going to wait a little bit, like, let me kind of let this settle in, let a few cuts happen, and then we'll come back with another wave of a video. The big move happened. Shout out to Speakeasy. He actually sent me this first before I saw this. And this is that the Detroit Lions are releasing quarterback Nate Sudfeld, who this was kind of the big move. Now, for the Lions' sake, I think this helps them a ton in terms of putting together this 53-man roster, because for me, having one extra spot would have been very beneficial. And I don't think that the Lions are going to take my crazy strategy of trying to cut both long snappers. They have already let go of Scott Daly, but it seems like they're going to try to hold on to Hogan Hatton. So instead, now we see Nate Sudfeld has been released. And really, my whole projection about putting Sudfeld in, and I think Easy did the same thing, was simply based on what we had heard from Dan Campbell about wanting to keep Nate Sudfeld around, understanding the offense, and guaranteeing that he is here, but also potentially not feeling like right now Hendon Hooker would be the first option if I needed to go to him in week one. I thought after the second preseason game, he did enough to be like, yep, that's the number 2 quarterback. He looked poised. He looked confident. Looked like he could run this offense. And then in week 3, the Lions said, hey, go Nate Sudfeld, Hendon Hooker, you're going to handle business. You're going to play pretty much the entire game. We need reps, which is what Dan Campbell kept alluding to. They need reps. They need to just see Hendon Hooker on the field. And he went out there and he performed really well. Now, he had some missed throws. It wasn't perfect. Obviously, he had the interception to Isaiah Williams. There was about 3 or 4 missed throws that I could put on him to Shane Zylstra into the flat. You know, the Donovan Peoples-Jones one where he kind of threw him through the zone. A few throws like that. But he also made some excellent throws as well. That one deep fade that he threw was very catchable. The one little sidestep hit Shane Zylstra on the drag route. They had the miss to Donovan Peoples-Jones, but it was really, again, about the poise. It was about the comfortability under pressure. It was about the quick processing whenever there was an extra rusher, just say, let me get the ball to my hands. But at the same time, it was also the creativity, because there were some examples of unblocked players. We had a lot of unblocked players. He was sacked 5 times in that game, but his creativity to be able to get out of pocket, be slippery, get positive yards. I thought he left maybe a few things on the table because he was using his legs, but I also didn't think it was overly like, I'm just going to use my legs, I'm not going to look downfield. He kept his eyes downfield. He kept that option available. He just was decisive in saying, I'm going to take off and run. And I thought he was more decisive than, say, the beginning of the preseason when we got to see him, where we would see him take a sack and it was like, I don't know what's going on here. Here, Pittsburgh dropping into quarters coverage. You can see the clear awareness by Hendon Hooker, understanding I want to try to move this defender, so he tries to hold the flat, then give a little fake before coming back to hit the little hitch route. But it's like, hey, we got to speed up that processing time. It's not there. Let's hit the flat, or let's get away from this, instead of really just forcing that thing to wait for it to be open. I thought that happened a couple of times. Versus, again, the progressions, eyes downfield, a throw like this. Yeah, sometimes he doesn't always play with the best touch, but there is consistency in his throwing motion, where, again, you can dial that in, and once you get into a good spot, you're going to get a lot of consistent results because he throws the same all the time. This is his eyes well, like here with the free safety, and as soon as he drops out, he's like, hey, let me get back to number 2. He's good working through progressions just like this. Remember, this is a veteran quarterback. He had a lot of experience going back to college. He was an older guy coming out, and this is just what you got to see during the preseason. So these were really good examples of what Hendon Hooker is very capable of, and just his feel, and a lot of good examples of him stepping up in the pocket while also still keeping his eyes down the field. Some of those slippery creative plays that turn into scrambles, eyes downfield, but feeling it, stepping up, and then all of a sudden it turned to a takeoff, or it turned into a throw, and you love that innate feel in the pocket. And again, processing-wise, you'll get examples like this where maybe you want to see that process speed up, right? Where they ask the linebacker here to jump into the flat, so they're going to drop out their defensive end or their edge rusher into this hook curl zone. You're going to see that he's going to use his arm to try to fake and open up a little bit of a better window here to the slot Tom Kennedy, rather than maybe quickly just getting number 2, which probably wouldn't have been open because progression-wise the dig wasn't there yet, but maybe more so just saying, I'm going to throw this anyway. You do like that it's not just blind reads. He's not just throwing the football because that's what's supposed to be open. He does understand that the defensive tackle is, or the defensive end is standing there. That being said, though, it's like, hey, maybe we could still try to fire it into this window. Even though you don't love it, we can still try to fire it in there. But again, that's a trait that he has. He doesn't throw to traffic very often, and he's not going to throw into defensive backs leverage. He understands leverage of his throws, and that's why on the Peoples-Jones drop, you saw him throw outside shoulder, and because of that, the ball couldn't be picked off. It was a beautiful example. Later on in the game, we saw him really settle in, be very decisive, and seemingly improve throughout the game. I love the quick little throw he had to Shane Zylstra, which was immediate. Get the ball to my hands. It's open. Let's just get the ball to my hands and let's get positive yards. Turns into an 8-yard gain. Like, take the first read. Take the guy that's open, right? Don't try to make the monster play here. But overall, I think Hendon Hooker showed a lot of the things that you loved back in college. He had a few misses, but it wasn't overly like, wow, this guy is all over the place. He had a slow start in the second week against Kansas City with a couple of missed throws, but he dialed it back in. He had a consistent throwing motion throughout, whether there was pressure, whether there was not pressure, keeping his eyes downfield. And again, his legs were kind of a game-breaking aspect. And every time he came in, you felt like, hey, you had a chance to go score some points because Hendon Hooker is in the game. But it was overall, for me, I just felt comfortable that this guy could handle number 2 quarterback responsibilities if he had to at the beginning of the season. And I think that's sort of the place that the Lions ended up getting to here to say, hey, we're willing to cut Nate Sudfeld, because we didn't need to see him in week 3. We kind of know what Nate Sudfeld is. We like him. We liked him in practice. We can get Hendon Hooker to prove himself. Then maybe this is something that we could consider, and clearly the Lions did consider, and they made that decision. Now, I think it'd be ideal to get him back on the practice squad, because then he could be, in theory, your emergency quarterback, which I think the Lions would love to have that option. We just have to see if we can get him back. Do you want to come back here? It's also very much so still on the table that the Lions end up trying to keep 10 offensive linemen, and this move could help there. We haven't heard anything on Jake Fromm. I expect that he's going to get let go, but if that does happen, then it may be even more unlikely that he ends up back on the practice squad. He may be just kind of Lions' backup option to get him back on the practice squad if they can get Nate Sudfeld back. So we have to keep an eye on that one. Maybe the Lions shock and keep him as quarterback 3. I don't believe that will happen. We just didn't see enough of him. Even in the last game when he played, it was very limited. But as of now, Lions seemingly are going to keep 2 quarterbacks. Now, the other 2 moves that we were given this morning, first off, Abraham Beauplan, the linebacker who came in a little bit late for the Lions through the preseason. He has been let go by the Lions, but they do want him back on the practice squad, which makes a ton of sense. This guy played with incredible energy. He was awesome when playing downhill. He was extremely slippery. His take on blocks was a little bit of a problem. There were times that he would get kind of pushed out of the play. Thought there were other occasions where he'd be a little bit overly aggressive to try to get downhill. But for the most part, more often than not, his aggressiveness paid off in a really good way. Having Beauplan back on the practice squad would be great, right? Again, this linebacker room is really strong for what we saw in the preseason. So he is a guy that definitely showed himself from the very first time he stepped on the field, of some of just the aggressiveness that he was tackling with, and then all of a sudden to the run game, the flow that he had, the pursuit that he had, the aggressiveness, the spill plays in the backfield. He brought that to the table, and he was very confident in the decisions that he made, and I can live with that at the linebacker position to play fast. It's Stephen Gilmore, the cornerback who has been let go by the Lions. I listed him as one of my practice squad wish list players, really out of all the cornerbacks. Again, I think cornerback is kind of set in stone. We'll just have to see if they keep Dorsey and Kendall Vildor. I think they'll actually keep all 6, but we'll see. However, Stephen Gilmore is one of those that definitely felt like he was on the outside looking in. Obviously didn't have the takeaways this preseason, but it's not like he performed poorly. Like, he performed at a fine level that in past years, maybe for really light at cornerback, he does make the team as the final cornerback. Yes, he got beat on the vertical route, but the second one, he did force it out of bounds. That goes down as a pass breakup. Still was in phase, I believe, in both of those vertical shot plays to try to hit on him, and we can't take away what he did in run support either. Stephen Gilmore didn't have the best preseason. Again, he didn't have the training camp that I thought Dorsey had, or maybe even Kendall Vildor had.
Also, the other area where I want to give Gilmore credit, back to training camp, because, again, I think that's a huge aspect. You think about Sudfeld, where he performed well, especially really early in camp, the way that he was performing, he stood out a little bit, which, again, is a big reason I think the Lions do like him. Stephen Gilmore didn't really show slot flexibility, which I think could have helped him a ton, but what he did show is he showed that he was really willing to play a physical game, and he's an undersized corner that seemed to be much stronger this season, and he was able to handle some business dealing with physicality and one-on-ones, for example, and that was an area that I thought he really grew when you take a look at what he did throughout training camp. So really dialing into playing a wide corner position and making sure that his body type could handle different body types at receiver.
Someone that would still seemingly be nice to keep around the practice squad just for depth purposes and continue to try to see him grow. But I don't think it's a lock that he's the guy that the Lions want to get back on the practice squad. I don't think that's a lock, but I think out of all the cornerbacks that probably will get let go, Stephen Gilmore to me would be at the top of that list. But again, I don't know that it's a lock the Lions want to do that with only being able to bring 16 players back on the practice squad. It's your latest update with these Lions cuts. Nate Sudfeld is not a Lion as of now, but he may end up back on the practice squad. Hopefully that is the case. But Hendon Hooker is seemingly the number 2 quarterback, and I think the Lions made a great decision there. But also, it's really exciting to see that they were able to get that kind of confidence in him after really playing in a full game in week 3 of the preseason. So this is awesome. It's going to help a lot for the numbers, and we'll have to see how the rest of this shakes out. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.